Hi, this is your host Sapnil Bhartia, and welcome to another episode of CISO Insights. And today we have with us once again is Steve Winterfeld, Advisory CISO at Akamai. Steve, it's great to have you back on the show.
Always enjoy these discussions. Good to be here.
Yeah, and today we are going to talk about healthcare security challenges. Of course, healthcare is heavily regulated. The data they have is also very sensitive. In past, we have seen a lot of cases where a lot of sensitive data was leaked, released, or stolen. Now, when we look at healthcare, you and I have talked a lot about things like ransomware. What I want to understand is that when we look at healthcare data that criminals target, can you talk about what is the incentive? Is it more or less like, I mean, financial data, we do know you can get credit card details, you can use it, but how is healthcare data is being exploited? Why cyber criminals look at healthcare?
Well, I mean, again, they're cyber business people from their perspective, and healthcare data is extremely valuable. You have the insurance data, you have the privacy data, and they can just monetize it. In some cases, it's more valuable than credit card data. As we look at why it's a focus, they're also more likely to pay. You mentioned, ransomware. Well, safety is a big driver. So, there are different subcategories of healthcare, but within the provider, the hospital, clinics, safety is a big driver. So if they get hit by something like an availability attack, DDoS, or, something like ransomware, then their incentive to pay is higher because it's a safety issue. And you sometimes you just want to go after the easier target. Generally, healthcare is behind industries like commerce and finance, where their maturity is a little higher. And so you have valuable data and potentially, not as well protected. And healthcare has challenges. They have tons of legacy systems. A lot of this is federated. You think about one hospital, but that hospital is federated across a lot of different IT systems. And the staff isn't necessarily paid as well as, somebody in finance. So, you get somebody trained up on your cybersecurity staff and they're leaving you. So again, valuable data, incentive to pay, and maybe an easier target.
How healthcare is different from other industries, and that if they need different kind of security for the whole space.
So again, when we think of healthcare, at least when I think of healthcare, I think of a big hospital. But the reality is that's an aspect of the healthcare industry. And so, their motivations are pretty straightforward of safety. Their number one concern is providing care and healing to people. And so their primary driver is around availability of systems. The next part of the industry is the payer, the insurance companies. And here it's more your traditional finance industry concerns. People taking over accounts, people filing false claims, and a lot of fraud. And so again, now there's a different, mechanisms to detect fraud than there are to provide safety. And then you have somebody like the pharma industry, and, that's all about collaboration. You have something like a clinical trial going on. You have, new medicines being developed. There might be universities involved. And so theirs is a very, again, federated network, different, motivations, different countries involved. And so now I'm really about intellectual property protection. I want to detect who has the data, how is the data being protected across all these different networks. And then you have all those other medical devices, kind of like IoT. They're unique and they're not protected in traditional ways. They're harder to get updates to, telemedicine, all these kind of other sections. So all of these have different focuses, different ways they're protecting, because different end goals of what they're trying to protect.
Can you talk about any recent cases where you're like yeah, these things are happening, but it did not have a lot of impact, or where you saw some security breaches that happened recently, you're like, hey, this is, kind of eye-opening, and we need to do a lot of work in this space.
So again, we see a lot of these large breaches. In fact, some of them, if they're publicly traded with the new SEC rule around materiality, you can go read the 8Ks of their reporting out on the financial impacts. Really, I think the one that probably gets the most news coverage is always ransomware, especially when it's against, some provider like the police department or healthcare or some service we really depend on. And we've talked about this in the past, a year or so ago in one of our State of the Internet reports. We put out our research around initial access brokers and understanding how to go through the crisis management of ransomware, which is a little different than a breach, and understanding, the payment challenges and how to think about payment before you're in crisis. But really, I think, our most recent SOTI State of the Internet report is coming out, and it talks about a couple things that I think are big. The first is there's such a push for transformation and visibility, transparency, and a lot of that's coming around from APIs. And, we see that 41% of the API attacks are targeting payer organizations. So right now, the insurance agencies are probably under the biggest attack. But across all of this, we continue to see that sprawl, the rogue APIs, the zombie APIs, all these APIs that aren't protected by your infrastructure. And the other thing we report on, and again, this is because Akamai spends a lot of time protecting this, is around these, bigger attacks, the denial of service attacks. We see a spike in denial of service attacks against Europe organizations, just like we have seen against European financial organizations. But we've also seen 415 million monthly average layer 7 DDoS attacks. And again, layer 7 is your web page, layer 3, 4 is your infrastructure, and then there are DNS attacks. And across all of those, we just see an increase in this DDoS attack. And so, again, against providers, API attacks are stealing data. Against payers, they're trying to get access to accounts. Against pharma, they're trying to break into that collaboration or prevent collaboration. So all of these are attacking the same infrastructure with different motivations.
What kind of impact, that use, sometimes we don't even know unless and we get a mail from them. Hey, in 4 months ago, there was a breach, we always learn about that. But what kind of impact, the industry and the individuals are experiencing because of these, breaches that are happening?
Well, I'll start off with, the actual healthcare companies themselves. And a lot of these breaches, if it's a ransomware attack, it is a tremendous impact. Some of these are not back online for weeks. If you're somebody going into surgery or worst case in surgery when ransomware hits, these are real hits. And so, as I think about what, a healthcare company can do, and this is at the broadest level. The first is have visibility across all your systems. And we talked about this earlier. You have legacy systems. You have this MRI machine you paid millions of dollars for that's 10 years old. That's something you have to isolate. You can't really protect it with modern technology and have high visibility on what's going on. Then you have this transformation stuff with API. And API, we wanted to look at, do I know where all the APIs are? Am I doing, good code training? Am I training the developers or inspecting the service providers to say, are you compliant with the OWASP top 10, vulnerabilities? Am I reviewing those in development and am I technically checking for those in runtime? And again, DDoS, am I looking for the latest peak? If I have a service provider, do I have that process in place? So again, visibility, rapid mitigation, and then on the other side, strong, well developed processes and exercise them to validate that they're going to work. You asked the second question about individuals and how to protect themselves. And I think, this is just the same general practices. Manage your account. If you have a strong password, great. You probably need an account manager because we have so many passwords now. But don't be like my dad. Don't reuse the same password a bunch of places, especially where it matters. Healthcare, finance, things that are going to impact you. And whenever you can turn on extra features like MFA, secondary authentication, getting that text, you want to turn those on. You want to have some sense about phishing. If somebody sends you an email, don't necessarily follow the link. Go directly to your account. Use some common sense. Really think through those phishing emails. It's easy to get trapped. There's so many of them out there. Just slow down and think about the potential impact and try not to click on any of those links or jump in. Ultimately, harden your device and your system. Make sure you're on the latest update. Go into the settings, turn on privacy. If it's something you care about, not as applicable in healthcare generally, but your records, make sure they're backed up. And finally, social media. What you say on social media can put a target on your back. So again, just think about what you're saying. I know you think in similar ways. Anything you want to add to those?
The only thing I have, like, one is that we also get a lot of phone calls. I get a lot of phone calls, and my thing is that if it is for back, I would call back on the back number, not the number that you are giving me. I am from India, but I also get a lot of scammers from India. And the moment I hear I would get, hey, oh, so you have some pending due, and I need your credit card information. I need this, and we'll fix it at your end. Even when these calls are there, so number one, I would like to know, because sometimes people say, hey, it's a call, so it is more valid than a spam web message. That is one thing I would talk about. And what is your advice there? Second is that because of Gen AI, people can create. You and I have this discussion. People can create the voice of my wife. That, hey, I'm at the hospital. They need my, can you send me this? So how? And they do target a lot of vulnerables, old people and things like that. What is your advice on these phone calls and other, medium where people may spoof somebody and try
Yeah,
to steal
you
your
talk about
information?
other mediums. I got a postcard that offered me to become an Amazon buyer, which was clearly trying to make me, give away all my account information. I can't believe I got a snail mail phishing attack. You get them through social media, you get them on the phone. And again, I think this is where, you're not paranoid if they're really out to get you. Then you're just cautious. I don't want you to be hostile. I don't want you to be paranoid, but you really do need to have situational awareness. If someone's calling you, I was just talking to a Secret Service agent. There are people calling and saying things like, you're about to be arrested. Well, that puts me into panic mode. Something as silly as your social security has been locked. If you think about that for a minute, it doesn't make sense. But if I just go into that panic mode, and so as soon as you find yourself going into that panic mode, then pause. One of the extreme attacks, we've talked about pig butchering in the past, but another example is on the phone. They'll call using your voice and saying, hey, your son has been arrested. You need to post bail. We'll give you a second to talk to your son. When you talk to that person, have a password that, say, hey, what's the family, emergency password? It could be, I don't know, avocado, whatever you want that word to be. But that way, it's not somebody faking that voice, because you've given yourself the security of on an authentication device there.
When it comes to healthcare specifically, can you also talk about what kind of team, what kind of organizational structure they have when it comes to security. As you mentioned earlier, there's some of these healthcare industry, they're still running some of those older systems. Do they have the same old approach to security that it's someone else's problem, it's an afterthought, we'll see when it happens, or they have, at least in the security space, embrace some of these modern day practices, 0 day, or whole DevOps, DevSecOps. They also have CISOs. Can you talk about the organizational structure that you see in the healthcare industry?
So again, across all those verticals, such a difference. Something that's at the one end is medical devices. They're new, they're all technology, and then the other is a major hospital, and they need to move slowly. They need to make sure things are authenticated. They don't want to fail fast, because if they fail fast, a patient could be at risk. And so you have two extreme cultures there. And as I look at those, though, I will tell you both of them are taking security much more seriously. Just like everywhere else, now that the threat is truly hitting them, now that they're feeling those impacts on their industry, they're reacting appropriately, and they're really developing those capabilities they need. Now, like everybody else, it's a challenge. I always say, as a CISO, I have a $10 budget and $20 worth of problems. And so that's where I kind of say, you want to go to those big things that, first of all, I really want to protect things that scale. APIs scale quickly. Ransomware has a huge impact. So I want to pay attention to those things that have a large impact and scale quickly. And I want visibility on those. So first is, you can't protect what you don't know about. So that's why I say step one is really, do you have visibility? And I see more and more of our customers at Akamai coming in from healthcare that are really looking for that are talking to us about, we do want visibility. We do want that ability to rapidly react. So I think they're coming along quickly, but they still have those challenges we talked about.
Now, what is your advice to different type of healthcare companies and these teams?
So again, I think, for the medical devices, I really want to figure out how to isolate those when they're coming into the hospital. I need access to that data, but I don't want a flat data. I want a segmented data. And again, this comes from Akamai. One of our capabilities is segmentation. So I want to be upfront about that. But regardless, if you have a flat network, the risk accepted by one is a risk accepted by all. So I want to segment those legacy systems, and I want to segment things that are brand new. And as I do that, that gives me an appropriate level of risk. And so all of this comes back to risk management. And again, with something like pharma, I'm on the other end where it's understanding what's happening to the data rather than segmentation, because it's so federated. How do I track? How do I tag data? How do I detect where the data is being, exfiltrated to some place it won't be? So then it's more about looking at that outward bound, that those fires, is somebody going through my DNS and stealing data, things like that.
And let's talk about Akamai now. Do you folks have, in your product portfolio, solution specifically for healthcare industry, or just the whole breadth of solutions that caters to healthcare as well?
So within Akamai, we protect the data lifecycle. Now, what we have done is we've said, okay, listen, if you're in healthcare, these are probably the higher risk. One of the first things we'll talk to them about is, just what I said is ransomware is such a potential huge impact. So you want to segment your administrative network from your healthcare network, IT versus OT. Within your healthcare network, you want to segment legacy and other things that you don't have as much fidelity of control in. You may segment a clinic, because a clinic is not as secure as the main hospital. So that's certainly one of the areas. Access control, whether it's your employees or whether it's third parties that need access to your data. How do you control that through zero trust network access? So a lot of what we talk to our healthcare providers around is that zero trust life cycle. And then obviously, some of those are concerned about denial of service attacks. We're well known for that. That's another area where we tend to help them.
Steve, once again, thank you so much for sharing great insights. I mean, I cannot, say enough, that these are really some very, very valuable resources. So thanks for all that great information. And I look forward to our next discussion. Thank you.
I always enjoy the collaboration. Thank you, guys.